Howdy there, fellow Shadow Priests. Today the channel is taking a first look at Necro Shadow Priest. As soon as 9.1 dropped, we have access to a new legendary for Necro Lord Shadow Priest, and it's made it really good and really viable, and I've gotten a ton of questions. Stop when you're going Necro. Is Necro good for Shadow Priest? Should I change Covenants? Should I play Necro in this comp and that comp? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to level Renown, but you know what? I did it, and it paid off big time. I got 1 to 48 Renown in about 2 different sessions. I think it took me maybe like 8 or 9 total hours. If you're interested in swapping over, the fastest way to get Renown, I think, is to do layer 6 Torghast, just running straight to the end of the boss from like 1 Renown all the way to 31, and then from 31 to your campaign, your world quest, and your callings, the world boss, all that fun stuff. You can do LFR, I think, too. And then, yeah, once you get to 48, you can make this legendary. You're going to want to make it on the boots because you can't get haste verse boots from PvP. So this is going to give you better stats as well, which is really nice. And just by looking at the legendary, casting an Unholy Nova summons a Rattling Mage that gains 2% additional damage and healing each time an enemy affected by Unholy Transfusion is damaged by an ally up to 100%. So it can really pump if you're hitting like a target with your teammate and maybe even your healers hitting and maybe some pets. It's pretty insane how fast it can ramp up. I know in particular, I heard there's a bug with demo locks where like the imps count as allies, and if there's like a bunch of imps hitting someone, the mage can ramp up really quickly. So just something to be considerate of when you're using the ability. Make sure that you have good uptime and you're not using it and then like getting CC'd or running away, because you want to be hitting the target with Unholy Transfusion as much as possible. So I'm just going to throw up the dot, and it's going to summon my boy for about 20 seconds, and you can see he just starts teeing off. He's just going hard. I mean, look at this guy. Someone has been calling him Jamal in my stream, so I'm going to call him Jamal for now. And it's just like a really easy way to put out DPS. I mean, pretend we just pressed Mind Games here with no cooldowns. It probably would have hit for 6k, and I'm not doing any damage to the training dummy. It did 20k damage from the pet, 13k from the dot, so the dot's already doing as much as Mind Games, just spread out over time. And then obviously the Rattling Mage is gonna pump a lot more if I'm, consistently hitting the target that is being attacked. So I think the appeal of Necro is that the damage is really easy to get off, and you don't have to deal with interrupts. You don't have to worry about reflex, groundings, wind shear, all that stuff. You can just kind of like let it rip and have fun. That's really interesting. Really good into the cleave meta, I think, at the moment. There's so many teams when we queue up, it's like turbo cleave, turbo cleave, turbo cleave, or do I have any games? Oh shit, I was playing, never mind. Anyways, so yeah, if you're playing Necro right now into the meta, it feels a lot better just because you don't have to set anything up. You can just press your buttons and let it rip. Now you also have Fleshcraft, which is awesome. You can get a huge shield. If you're playing the BM trinket from last season, you can BM Death Repair Fleshcraft for a 45k shield. So in the opener, against a rogue mage, they're typically going to open on the person without the Fleshcraft shield. If you're playing Necro Lord RPS, they can't open Shaman, they can't open Rogue because he's stealth, they can't open Priest with like any amount of cooldown, so they're kind of forced to just do like a soft opener, and then you can kind of have your way with them. So Fleshcraft is going to have a lot of defensive utility as well. It's super good when you're not being trained. If you use it to avoid CC, like if I see an incoming Cyclone or Polymorph that I don't have death for, I can flesh in the middle of the map and kind of laugh it off, which is fun. I actually Fleshcrafted a Death Coil yesterday, and that felt awesome. Maybe we can show some clips of that later. Typically, when you're getting trained, it's hard to get a Fleshcraft off because you're going to have so many interrupts focused onto you, but you can also, versus a lot of teams, play improved MD and get kicks with MD, especially if it's like a mage team or something. So if there's both kicks, they both kick MD, you can sit there and flesh and watch them try to break it. It'll be pretty funny because it's a huge shield. And we also get this 120 mastery buff, which is super good because it's gonna amp our total damage, right? Mastery is just your damage is increased by however many percent for each dot you have on the target. So if we cancel this buff, we're gonna go from 6% to 4%. So we get 2% extra damage just by having the shield on. So if you're not being trained, make sure to have the shield on at all times. It's really helpful. And I don't know if I talked too much about the Unholy Nova ability, but this is essentially just a dot. It is a disease, so if you're facing another Shadow Priest, make sure to cleanse the disease because you won't be able to stack up the stacks on the mage if you're cleansing the disease. It does cost a lot of mana. I noticed against teams where I have to mass the spell a lot or purge, I sometimes don't always have enough mana to use it. But in an ideal world, you like press PI, your troll racial if you're troll male like me, void form, have your Shadow Fiend up beforehand, and your boys just start popping off. I mean, do your normal DPS rotation, stand still, max crank, and let's see how much the pet's doing. So the one summon of my pet, I did 40k damage. He's still popping off. So I did, my pet was my top damage. The Unholy Transfusion with PI and Void Form did 24k. And also I should have mentioned that this is like a meteor effect. When you send the Unholy Transfusion, it's going to spread out to all the near targets. So try not to break CC with that. If you're playing with like a mage or a rogue, be cautious of that. So just a super easy way to put out damage. And then you also get some interesting soul binds and everything here. So when frictionless coating, when reduced below 50% health, ooze courses over you, granting you a shield for 15% of your maximum health. May only occur once for 30 seconds. What else do we get? That's good. Ultimate form, we already talked about that. Undulating maneuvers, I think that's probably better. I feel like the extra finesse conduit is better than the extra endurance conduit. And then at the bottom here, Unholy Nova summons Kevin's Oozling to fight alongside you for 20 seconds, which is cool because there's just more passive damage that a pet is doing, and you don't have to do anything fancy about that. So if we look at some of my details here, my pet in this game, combined, they're both doing almost, what, 18% of my damage? This is against a team that also is just running away, so it's kind of hard to get good value out of it. Maybe we have some other games. Yep, here's maybe 1 or 2 uses of it. I get 40k damage from the pet, 17k from disease. Not bad. And a lot of teams are going to be reacting to your buttons, right? You're going to pop all your cooldowns, and they're going to prop their walls or their damage reduction. So the damage can be always higher depending on what kind of cooldowns they use to trade. But overall, in like a long game versus something like a turbo cleave, which we can hop into here, we've got a situation where it's going to be so hard to get a mind games off against this team, right? They have reflect, they have grounding, shear, pummel, and then when I finally do land the mind games, we have to have some kind of CC for the druid. So it's kind of an uphill battle trying to get a mind games off against turbo cleave. So let's just take a look at how the damage output happens here. We're just looking at some videos from the stream from the other night too, playing some RPS above 2800. So our rogue gets knocked out of stealth. I'm just going to use my distance here, dot both the targets up, and then maybe as soon as they get to me, I'm going to start loading up the damage. So I Shadow Fiend before I actually even Void Form, which is really nice. I think this is good. All my damage is going to be rolling. I popped my Unholy Transfusion before I Void Formed. I probably should have used PI and Void Form and then the Unholy Transfusion for maximum damage, but I think it's okay. I'm going to start popping off here anyways. But yeah, in that ideal world, you generally want to use PI and Void Form before you Unholy Transfusion. I think it's still going to amp your damage, but I think there was maybe 5 or 6 seconds where I didn't get much out of it. I shackle the Shaman because there's no grounding, and they're too far away to like micro CC me. Just trying to use all instant casts here. I don't want to get kicked. I do juke the Warrior. Doomwind's really good if I can try to mind control or peel here. It gets disarmed, so I guess I don't need to at the moment. Generally want to mind control Doomwinds if you can. We silence the Druid on the kidney shot, stun him out. Just doing all instant casts. This is why the build is so good. Look at my damage, 3.7k DPS at the moment. Really strong for getting trained. And I'm also playing Driven to Madness. Here's a good example of Fleshcraft. No interrupts on me, so I'm going to Fleshcraft there while my healers CC'd. Really good that that happens. My damage is back up, so we're just going to want to get a Void Form off and press this off cooldown. I should have already Void Formed. I don't know why I'm going for a fear here. It's not going to happen. Unholy Transfusion, it should be a Void Form. Here's a Void Form. Try to kill the grounding. I Death the Warrior here on accident. That's cool. Healer's going to get hexed here. Time to peel. If I can, whatever I can do to peel, mind control would be insane. I shield the rogue on his vanish. We have CC back up, and I'm still in Void Form, so I'm going to silence on the Garrote. He's going to get kidneyed out. I stun the healer. Shadow Crash. Avatar. Scared. He's disarmed. Our disarms are on point from the rogue this game. The Warrior trinkets aggressively. Doom wins. There's no shear. I can mind control him here, so I just hit this mind control. Makes the Warrior have to get off my rogue and come kick me. cancel it so I don't get kicked. Staying away from the warrior, I moved back there so I wouldn't get pummeled. Dotting everything, dotting everything. He shears me on Mind Blast. Interesting, so I just start purging. Grounding, kill it. The warrior has no trinket, and the shaman has no trinket too, so either one of them can really die. My void form's off cooldown, my PI's off cooldown, and my unholy transfusion's off cooldown. I don't think they're going to live this next setup here. We get a kick on the clone. I'm going to CC the druid here. Pressing all my buttons. It seems like I'm using unholy transfusion before void form a lot. I don't necessarily think that's what you're supposed to do, but again, once you pop PI, it's going to increase the damage of all of your dots that are already on the target, so I think it's okay. We shear the druid, just spamming void bolts, Gonna come DR fear him up here, Iron Bark, dump your insanity when you can too in void form. I'm kind of holding on to a lot. Grip him out of the doom winds. I might mind control the Sham if I have to. Oh, we just kill. Never mind. So my rogue did 4k DPS and I did 3.5k. Like, that's kind of insane damage output, especially against Turbo Cleave. I'm not gonna lie, I don't think we beat this team as Necro. I'm pretty sure I would get farmed by Turbo. And let me mouse back over my damage breakdown and see what it was. I don't have access to this recount, so I just want to see what it says. So my mage did 60k damage, and that's with 3 uses, so about 20k per use. The dot did 54.9k, and if you add that up, that's going to be like 19% of my damage. Mind Games would have maybe done 20k damage that game, as opposed to the over 100k that the Necro was able to provide, and it also gave me the flesh shield and the mastery buff. So we're definitely loving Necro Shadow Priest right now, especially into these cleaves. You can just really crank them down in burst. So this is 2800 team. We're playing at the highest rating you can play almost, and it's just definitely working out. Like, I can also do better things, I think, with using that unholy transfusion after I void form, but for the most part, it's just a lot of damage for the enemy healer to handle. I think people might catch on to it and maybe start trying to counter it more. You can dispel the disease and the pet's going to do less damage, but for example, this team doesn't have a disease dispel, and most teams on the ladder don't really have a disease dispel. It's a lot of Arshams and druids, and they can't dispel disease, so really good to face teams like that can't really dispel it. People could line of sight your pet, but let's be honest, a melee cleave is just never going to run away. They're just always going to attack, so that isn't going to be too much of an issue for us. Necro Shadow Priest. Let's check out actually the AWC games. I had one of these open because I wanted to mention that this is becoming not only more popular on the ladder, but in the tournament. So think about the matchup we just fought, Turbo, right? Now we're facing Windwalker, Warrior, Resto Shaman. So they have 3 interrupts. It's going to be really annoying to get a Mind Games off for the Shadow Priest. Necro is also going to give him a lot more survivability and tankiness. So he is playing Necro to kind of pump out a lot of damage and also be able to live the crazy bursts from a Windwalker and Warrior. Now, I always get farmed by Sea-Doo's team with Shadow Priest because I don't play with Holy Paladins and I can't get bopped on all their cooldowns. So this team actually has a really solid pick into Sea-Doo's team. They have a lot of abilities to counter the spinning crane kick one-shots and the images. So they're going to be really pressed to try to force a kill outside of those windows. They have 2 bops, they have sack, disperse, fade. They should be able to rotate enough to survive. Not to mention, like, you can aura mastery and use that necro shield, which would be sick as well. So yep, just wanted to mention that the priests in the tournament are pretty much playing necro for the most part now. If we take a look at another random game, the priest is necro. This is just becoming more and more popular on the ladder. What's next? What else should we talk about for Necro Shadow Priest? I feel like that's a good little introduction on the damage, and maybe we can do some more videos on how to maximize your damage, because I definitely made some mistakes in the other ones. But for now, I believe that is it. Everybody, I just wanted to give a quick little update on the Necro gameplay and why it's good. So if you're interested in swapping Covenants, it's definitely worth it. If you play with a melee, it seems to be the most worth it. I tried playing with a mage, and it was still good. We could still win games, but I felt like there's a lot of scenarios where I would rather have mind games because I'm not being trained. And yeah, that's going to do it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. stay tuned for more content, and I will be streaming almost every night around 11 or midnight EST. So look forward to some high-rated games, and we'll take it from there. Thanks so much for watching. Peace.